Mercury One was busy this weekend in Oklahoma, and I want to give you an update. We founded Mercury One with a motto, for government to do less, we need to do more. And the organization tries to be an example of the principles of personal responsibility and help those who understand personal responsibility. And I've called on you over and over again, whether you can give time or money, to do so when there is an emergency. Because I think you and I genuinely believe that the world can be a better place. And you continually amaze me with your response. Because of your generous support that Mercury One, or to Mercury One, we have now been able to directly provide monetary and voluntary support to those who need it most. To date, Mercury One has raised over $1.7 million for tornado relief efforts alone in the Midwest. More devastating tornadoes happened this weekend, and Mercury One was again on the ground. I was in New York this weekend, and I heard about the tornadoes, and I immediately reached out to Mercury One and found out they're already on the ground, and they were able to provide relief to those who were affected. Also this weekend, Mercury One presented a $350,000 check to Shelter Oklahoma Schools. That is a brand new group that builds storm shelters and safe houses inside of the schools of Oklahoma so parents don't have to worry about their kids while they're at schools. Mercury One also donated $250,000 to the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office. You know how I feel about sheriffs, and I believe sheriffs are the ones who are going to be our last line of defense, but they are also the first responders. Many cases, and we found out that the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office needed a mobile command center when we happened to walk by and see their command center truck. I think it was an old purchased Wonder Bread truck, believe it or not, and a decent command center. I think is $500,000. We donated $250,000. And because of that, some local charity got together and said, you know, this is the rest of the country coming in and saving our butts through Mercury One, and Glenn Beck doesn't even live in Oklahoma. And if they can do that, we should do. And so they matched dollar for dollar, and so now they have an emergency response truck. Several of the deputies also have lost their homes. They were completely destroyed. They're receiving some funds from Mercury One. Fundraising and release efforts for the Midwest tornadoes were largely done via social media. Immediately after hearing about the tornadoes in Moore, I took to Twitter. Within hours, we had 2 truckloads and volunteers. We had food and water and diapers on the way to Oklahoma. Within hours, you answered the call. Operation Blessing, a charity that Mercury One has partnered with before, filled the relief tractor trailers. But this isn't the first time that you have been asked and have jumped in. When Hurricane Sandy devastated New York City and New Jersey, we were the first. I believe, I want to say we're one of the first, but I believe we were the first organization to provide any relief effort in areas like Coney Island. Now, we're in Texas. And I got my men down on the ground with trucks and relief in Coney Island before anybody else. In 2 days after Sandy, we raised over $300,000 in relief. Eventually, that number grew to just under $2 million for the Hurricane Disaster Relief Fund. Joe Carey met with members of the New York Christian Resource Center and a church in Coney Island not long after the hurricane had hit, and was surprised to find out that no other relief organization had reached out to them to provide relief. Church had no power. Their basement was flooded. The first floor flooded. We donated $100,000 so repairs could be made immediately at the church. We also teamed up with Operation Blessing and immediately dispersed $100,000 in supplies to 46 different churches and synagogues in the area. We also partnered with Hope New York City, Hope NYC for their Day of Hope, providing funds to purchase food, supplies, teddy bears, hot meals for the people in Long Island. The New York City Police Department and its offers were especially hard hit. Many people in other professions were able to take time off and rebuild. The officers of the New York Police Department were working longer shifts to deal with the effects of the hurricane. We contributed $250,000 to the New York Police Department Hurricane Sandy Assistance, so its members and its officers could focus on the safety of the citizens of New York City and not about finding the money to rebuild their own house. But we're not just about providing disaster relief. We also were thrilled to be able to hand over $600,000 to Chris Kyle's family from you. Chris was an American hero who served overseas and helped recovering veterans. And a fellow veteran killed him this last February. Donations were raised, and we went to they went to Chris Kyle's memorial and Fitco Cares, a foundation started by Chris and the Littlefield family. And also the Littlefield family also received a check from Mercury One. I want you to know how much good you have done. There's a picture someplace on one of our websites of a guy on a tractor this weekend. The Mercury One people went and all these volunteers had just finished for the day, and they were just dead tired. And they got into the car, and one of them said, let's go find somebody else to help. And so they started driving around. They drove around and they saw a guy in the middle of devastation, and you couldn't tell where one house or one yard began and the other left off. And he was all by himself, and he was picking up, a rock and a stick at a time, and he was putting them on the curb. And the van of Mercury One volunteers stopped, and they watched him for a while. They said, I think he's trying to clean up his own yard. How long will it take him? Somebody else said, not long if we help. So they got out of the car and they went and they helped him. They found out that he had lived there for 33 years with his wife and his children, and he was just trying to clean up his yard. And so the volunteers started. There was a lot of heavy stuff to move. Before long, somebody in a huge green tractor was coming down the street and sees them, turns down the corner, and says, hey, do you need a payloader? Would that help? All the volunteers said, oh my gosh, yes. Before long, another group of volunteers driving down the street saw this little beehive of activity, and they said, could you use another hand? Yes, they could. Now this one man who started his day all by himself, just trying to clean up his yard, there was nothing left of his house, had just a flood of people who loved him and was helping him. As they were working together, side by side, the guy who brought the tractor spoke to one of our guys at Mercury, said, where are you guys from? They said, we're from Dallas, Texas. He said, Mercury One, I've never heard of it. He said, yeah, we kind of fly under the radar. We just want to help people who are helping. Help the people do it. He said, where are you from? He said, well, I'm a pastor of a church. He said, I've only got 91 people in our church. And he said, I told everybody to take the day off, not to come to church today, but instead go volunteer. He said, we've been hit hard. He said, so I'm on my tractor, and we're using our last gallons of gasoline to help. He said, I was just on my way home when I saw you. Joe was the guy he was talking to, and he said, what do you mean you're down to your last bit? And he said, well, we had $10,000 in our disaster relief fund. He said, before I dismissed church today, he said, we all prayed. He said, Lord, help us. We're out of money. There's so many people to help. We need a miracle. Joe just stood up straight and said, Pastor, I think we're your miracle. We replenished their coffers so they can continue to help as a church, help all those who are in need in Oklahoma. This is what we're supposed to be doing. This is who we're supposed to be. We're supposed to help each other. And we are. And I am proud to call you friend. I'm proud to call you a listener. I'm proud to be one of many in your ranks. You're good people. I just thought I'd give you an update on the good that you have done.